Hey, welcome back. Welcome to Rotary class. When designing a rotary polisher, it's best to speak to a professional detailer, someone that uses one every day and has used one for a long time and prefers to use that tool. And that's what Final Inspection have done. This was the result of extensive consideration of the most important features and characteristics a professional detailer who uses a rotary polisher every day is after in his workhorse power tool. Now, since I'm about using my tools and not showing them off, I don't need it to be expensive or fancy. In fact, if I have my tools with me on site, like I did recently, I don't want them to be noticed by thieves. I also don't want something I'm using for 6 to 12 hours a day to be heavy, cumbersome, or have any ergonomic issues such as a squared out body or handle. It's got to be comfortable, it has to be light, and it has to be compact because I don't want it bumping into anything, and the slimmer it is, the better, especially around the gearbox. I want my machine to be quiet, but it doesn't have to be silent. I just need most or all of the noise to be cancelled out by my headphones, so I'm not left with a headache at the end of the day. It needs to be powerful, and that means at least 900 watts. More power is better, but I certainly don't want the motor to be too big because that makes some of the aforementioned qualities impossible to achieve. Now I need it to either have bulletproof reliability, which is difficult to achieve, or be affordable. I don't want to be stuck without a machine, and I certainly don't want to wait for service or replacement, so it has to be reliable or cheap enough to buy and have a backup. There is nothing more unprofessional than turning up to a job, having a machine fail, and having it take hours or days for repair or replacement instead of minutes to go fetch your backup machine, plug it in, and change over the pads. I also prefer a machine that stands upside down. I hate machines that don't stand upright and instead tip over. When this happens, it contaminates the pad when it comes into contact with whatever surface you've put it down onto. The pad needs to be in the air and it needs to be clear of any debris so it stays clean. Also, storing the machine with the pad in the air overnight means that the pad hasn't formed a flat spot anywhere. Now, not to sound egotistical, but as a professional, whether this machine is $100 or $1,000 makes very little difference, since the amortized cost of the tool between the hundreds of jobs that it's going to deliver is less than the cost of any other materials those jobs will consume. But of course, cheaper is better, and since Final Inspection is selling these machines to amateur detailers, the preference is for the cheapest unit possible with all the prerequisites I mentioned met. Now, with that all said, let me introduce you to Brutus. He's simple, well-built, handsome without pretentiousness. He's quiet, smooth, and compact. Compact is better, ladies. And that's all a professional detailer needs to achieve great results. Now, before we get into polishing, we have to talk safety. I'll make it as quick as possible. Rotary polishers are safe machines. This isn't a 9-inch grinder. This is not a dangerous tool. So don't be scared of it, but treat it with the respect it deserves because it can hurt you and it can damage someone's pride and joy. Believe it or not, rotary polishers have hurt me. They've caught clothes and they've flung things. You have to keep your wits about you, and if you feel a little tired, you're best off just to have a rest. Now first, get yourself some eye protection. Even just the cheapest safety glasses, you've got to have them. It's silly not to. Next, wear some headphones. I have a very old set of Sony XM3s that I love. They isolate okay and they cancel out noise very well. Sound quality is really good too. They're wireless, so there's no cord flapping about that's dangerous on the outside, and I don't have to tuck it inside. And putting them on, cancelling out the noise of the machine and having some of the music I like just puts me in the zone, and it helps me be happier and get more done. The day seems to go quicker and easier. Generally, detailers use their tools different to other trades. Some trades may use their tools, they might be louder, but they'll use them infrequently. They might use them for 10 or 20 seconds, or they're very short blips of noise. Detailers are generally very close, about this distance from the machine, and they're on most of the time for 8 hours a day. That's a lot of noise, and a lot of noise consistently. So definitely isolate yourself from that noise. Last, and I think probably most important now, is to wear a mask. Effectively, you're sanding paint and the particles that are generated are very, very small, very light, and they're airborne. So wear an N95 would be good, but wear anything that you can cover your nose and mouth with so you're not breathing in that nasty stuff. Now the first thing to do after attaching a pad and picking up your rotary polisher is to familiarize yourself with it. Get comfortable with the machine. Fortunately, Brutus is designed properly. So the switch is where your fingers naturally fall, so is the locking mechanism. And the potentiometer on top is where your thumb also naturally falls. It's very, very quick and easy to make adjustments. There's no looking at the back of the machine or adjusting the switch on the front or on the side here. Everything is ergonomic where it needs to be, so you can keep two hands on the machine all the time. Now I recommend getting yourself a panel, something that you don't mind damaging, and I then actually recommend to polish it to destruction. Purposely burn the paintwork so you're aware of what friction and sounds and smells leading up to a strike through feel, sound and smell like. Getting to know what that all feels like and what it feels like leading up to actually burning paintwork is good to know. When you're actually polishing a real vehicle for someone who loves that car, you know what to avoid. Now this is boring but important, so I'll make it as fast as possible. Good correction requires good foundation. So don't skip a proper wash and decontamination. Check out our video on this before skipping to the paint correction component quickly. Now that you've got a clean and dry vehicle and it's silky smooth because you've done a good job of decontamination, I recommend attaching a wool pad to your rotary polisher for 3 reasons. 1, wool stays cool. 2, wool cuts fast. And 3, wool gives you more feedback than foam. Now, this wool, final inspection wool, is an old wool. If you've been told that wool pads are no good in the past, that person who told you is probably correct. However, new wool is not old wool, and I recommend that you watch our video, The Paint Correction Bible, for more information on that. Apply a bit of polish to your pad and apply the recommended amount. The directions on the bottle are there for a reason. A common mistake is to apply too much polish. You clog the pad and you end up with a mess and just inefficient correction. You want just enough abrasives to do the cutting and break down efficiently, and you want enough lubricant to keep the surfaces cool while you're doing that. Now, unlike an RO, especially some of the cheaper ROs with the smaller motors, and especially some of the units with clutching mechanisms designed to keep the machine safe, Brutus is very, very unlikely to ever bog down. So I recommend starting on the slowest speed. And as you get comfortable with the machine, and that may be a few seconds, that might be a minute, start dialing in a little more speed. Notice that Brutus has speed control on the front. It's clear how to get more speed and how to get less speed, and you get haptic feedback and an audible click as well. You're never looking at the back or the side or taking your hand off the machine to find out what speed you're at. Once you've started working the polish around that area, remove the machine from the panel, switch it off, and feel that surface. If it feels warm, that's normal. If it feels uncomfortably hot, something's wrong. Usually when a surface is too hot, it means one of 3 things. You've used too much speed and/or pressure, you've used too little polish, so there's too little lubrication, or you've worked that area for too long. You can now remove the spent polish on that section with a paintwork cloth and paint cleanse. Paint cleanse, or truth serum, allows you to see your true correction by removing all the polish from the surface with no residue. Using a cloth only may leave some traces of that polished lubricant behind, and that can fill minor marks and give you a false reading. If you're happy with your correction, move on to the next area. If you're not, just repeat that process. A second or third pass to achieve correction perfection is not uncommon. Now, cutting in a panel is where you should begin your correction. Cutting in is the correction of all the detailed areas, usually done with a smaller pad. Once the cutting in is complete to the entire vehicle, bulk correction is then carried out and you blend into your cutting in areas. A rotary polisher with a small pad, in my opinion, is the easiest and fastest way to achieve that cutting in step. and bulk correction is best done with a 125 to 150 millimeter diameter pad. That's 5 to 6 inches for our friends up there. Larger pads don't necessarily get the job done faster, and often they're slower and they increase risk, especially on vehicles with curves. Think of a supercar, especially a Porsche. Using a pad larger than 150 mil is not going to be useful. Also, spreading the pressure across a larger pad gives you a slower correction, not a faster correction. You're putting more wear and tear on the machine as well. After every pass, spur the spent abrasives on your pad with a spurring brush. If you don't have one, any hard bristled brush, even a toothbrush will do. It's just that more bristles are faster. Don't use excessive pressure, especially with foams, as you'll damage the face of the pad, possibly taking chunks out of it. Wool is much more forgiving and cleans easier than foam. When you're ready to try foam, switch to it. Just keep in mind that it builds heat quicker because it creates more friction and retains more heat because it's a better insulator. Foam gives you shorter working times, which can be beneficial, but increases risk slightly. Foam polishing pads can be great. They'll give you more gloss than wool can, so experience them is great. Wool, especially in combination with low skill, will likely give you hologramming, so polishing with foam will likely be necessary, especially with some darker colours. If you're not sure about a rotary polisher, contact Final Inspection and hire one. I hope this was informative and entertaining as always. Any questions, never hesitate to ask. I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you.